Okay, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google in Switzerland, and part of what I do is talk with webmasters and publishers, like the ones here in the Hangout, the ones that submitted a bunch of questions already. As always, if there are any people here in the Hangout, especially the newer folks who'd like to go ahead and ask a first question, feel free to jump on in.
Hi, John. Back into to my question about duplicated content on the automotive website that we spoke about last time. Did you manage to take a look at this?
Not in detail. Not yet.
All right. Would you like to take a look at it in the future, or would you like us to send you some more details on it?
I'll dig into it a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Although I have another question for you. It's in regards to the content again. Currently, I'll tell you the story. Our website is selling car parts and accessories for about 6 years. It's a pretty big automotive website. But half of a year ago, we decided to add new categories and new products to the website that are not related to automotive industry at all. For example, some home audio, microphones, home theaters, and stuff like that. And we placed them in the root of the main website. And we noticed that currently our traffic heavily dropped on the automotive keywords. So can we say that that all those new products blurred the site theme and caused that traffic drop?
Usually it's not that simple. So it's not. Let me just mute you. We have a bit of an echo there. Usually it's not that simple that we would say, well, you focus on automotive parts. Now you added, I don't know, maybe furniture or something completely different. Then we would say, oh, well, this website is not so strong for automotive anymore. Usually we'd still focus on those automotive parts normally. So it's not that you would be diluting your website or kind of making it less useful for automotive parts by adding more other kinds of information there. So usually that's not something where I'd say it would be related.
John, a lot of people, you said it can confuse Googlebot if you add more different pages. You said that in one of a Hangout. That it can confuse Googlebot if you add.
No, it shouldn't. So I mean, adding more different kinds of contents can definitely make sense. It wouldn't result in us kind of like thinning out how we would rank your website for the existing content that's there. Of course, if you add a mix of high quality content and low quality content, then that's a different question. But if it's normal content that you're adding to your site and it's like a slightly different theme, then that should generally be fine. That wouldn't be something where I'd say it should cause problems. So if you're seeing a drop in ranking after something like that, then that shouldn't be due to adding different kinds of content to your site. That would probably be due to something else that maybe we're picking up across the site or that we're just not finding as useful as it used to be.
Okay. Hey, John, another question. Would that be a better way to organize it? Should we better get a new domain for the entire other non-automotive theme, or maybe a subdomain? Would that make any difference for Google at all?
I'm sure it would make a difference, but I can't say if it would be positive or negative difference. It would essentially be two separate sites out of one site, which is always a fairly big change when you're doing that with a website. So moving from one domain to another is something we can easily pick up on. Taking one domain and splitting it up into two, or two domains and combining it into one, both of those scenarios are very hard for us to guess ahead of time what would come out of that. And from my point of view, I personally prefer having one really strong website instead of splitting things up into separate websites. Just because if you can make one strong website, you can focus your energies a lot more and really make sure that everything across that whole website is as high quality as it can be.
Right.
So I personally don't like splitting things up that much. Sometimes I think it makes sense for marketing reasons. If you're targeting completely different audiences, maybe you have resale products that you sell directly to consumers, and other products that you sell to distributors. And it might be the same product, but a very different audience. Then maybe it makes sense to set up separate websites for that kind of situation. But in general, if you're targeting the same audience or generally the same audience, I really recommend making one really strong, really good website rather than a handful or a large number of less strong websites.
A good example to take a look at would be maybe Newegg. Newegg has some similar to that.
I don't know the Newegg site. I usually say Amazon as an example here, but Amazon also has a bunch of different websites, probably based on the different acquisitions that they've had over the years. So it's something where you can find pretty much everything on a big website like that. And I think if you can really build out a strong website that's kind of recognized as a brand, people want to go there, they explicitly want to go to that website because they think they can find the information they're looking for, then that's probably something that you could aim for.
Thanks a lot, John. Actually, we're visiting your meetings in order just to make sure we're doing everything right. And from our perspective, we checked our website and we still see that a major traffic drop on automotive categories. Well, would it be possible that in my message I'm gonna just include you a couple of examples so you could like take a look, because it's for us so irregular. I mean,
I'm happy to take a look. I can't promise that I'll be able to say much about that because a lot of times this is feedback that we bring back to the search quality team, and the search team will try to figure out, do we need to improve our algorithms? Are we doing something wrong here? Is the algorithm picking up something that maybe they don't want to tell you about explicitly? Those kind of situations. So I can't promise I'll be able to tell you need to change this line of code and that everything will be fine. But it's definitely useful information for us to have to discuss with the team internally.
Thanks a lot. That's going to be a great help for us. Thanks.
John, a quick follow-up on that. When you have a very niche-specific focused website and you are adding a bunch of categories and products not related to that niche, technically, aren't you diluting, though, some of the signals that the website has through these new pages? The signals will be spread out to both the niche-specific pages that you have as well as the new products that you've added. Perhaps this is why you also usually recommend for small businesses to just focus on one specific niche and not go to growth.
I wouldn't necessarily say that you're diluting things, but it's something where, especially if the quality isn't the same, or you can't like say this is something really well established here and you're adding something completely new that nobody really knows about or cares about maybe to your website as well, then of course you're kind of spreading things out a little bit. But if you're taking something really fantastic and adding more fantastic stuff to it, then that generally builds up on each other. It's not something where I'd say it would be a problem. And sometimes what happens is you have to introduce new products somehow, and nobody will know about these things for a while, but you hope that through your existing maybe brand recognition, people will come to your site and say, oh, well, this is interesting too. I'll recommend that to other people as well. I'll buy that, maybe whatever. So that's something where you kind of have to build up step by step. And obviously, if you're taking one thing and you're just piling on like lots and lots of new content, then it takes a while for us to understand what to do with all of that. But if this is good stuff, then we should be able to pick that up.
So there's no problem if I, for example, have a store selling laptops and IT products, and then suddenly I'm adding baby products or pet-related food. I don't know.
I'd say you'd have more problems with your audience than you would have with Google. In that, if you have a user base that is looking for IT products and they keep coming back to your site for that, and the main products that you promote now are suddenly baby powder, then they'll go, oh, this is not what I wanted to find here, and maybe run away. But if it's something where you know the audience is also interested in that, then sure, why not? And that might be the case, that you like target something specific to an IT audience that grows older over time, and suddenly they need baby products because they're all having kids. I don't know. These things can happen. So
So
Okay,
right,
so doesn't have any bias towards one or another, as long as the audience is.
Not that I'm aware of.
John, I have questions about app indexing in the Search Console. Is that for a different Hangout, or can I ask? Or
Go for it.
it's not news related, so I could share my screen to make it easier to understand. Screen. Okay, so I launched the Search and Roundtable app around here. It started to get indexed impressions, not many clicks, as you can see. And then they had that Search Console bug with the search analytics around here. And I'm like, oh, it'll be fixed. But when it was fixed, it just kept dying. And then I don't know if it has anything to do with the app and something that I've done, but when I look at the crawl errors, there's nothing, obviously. That's an issue you said you're working on, I think. And if I go to the fetch, and I fetch a new URL, it tells me these things, but it always said that, even when I first launched.
What's it saying? Let me click on you.
Sometimes it works. Like if I fetch the home page or certain older pages, they work. It says complete. But sometimes the URLs give me this, like, it's unsupported URI, which I can't figure out if it's just...
Oh, you have the colon in there. It should just be https / and then the host name and the URL.
So if I go like remove...
I mean, it depends on how you have your intent set up in the app, but...
Good question. So if I remove the colon, you said?
Yeah.
Leave the slash?
I mean, if you have it set up to respond to that,
I forgot how I set this up. Yeah, it looks like the ones that you're right. Okay, I'm an idiot. All right, I apologize.
Okay.
Thanks for
I think I passed the issue with the impressions on to the team, and they basically said this was mostly just because very few people have your app installed at the moment.
You got to install it.
Yeah, so those people who do have it installed, they'll see it, of course, in search. But those who don't have it installed, they won't see it.
I thought they see it anyway. I thought the new thing is that they show the app even to people who don't have it installed.
We show the install button if someone is explicitly looking for your app. So if they're like, I don't know what queries you would use. Maybe search engine roundtable app or a search engine roundtable maybe itself. Those kind of things should show the install button. But otherwise, it would only trigger on the content itself if you have the app installed.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
I thought there was a news release saying that even if you don't have the app installed now, they'll surface the content using the streaming feature.
I jump in. I mean, I've got the app, Barry, because it's great. And when I search for it, it comes up with the standard desktop version, and then at the top it tells me to open in the app. It doesn't necessarily give me an option straight away to go straight to the app. It actually shows the desktop version first.
Yeah, it's weird. It used to.
I think we did some experiments with bubbling up the app for content type queries. So if someone is searching for, I don't know, penguin, and you happen to write about penguins, then that's something where I believe we did an experiment about showing a deep link to the app directly, even for people who didn't have it installed.
Right, like the example, I guess it's just a limited number of people. The example was with hotels that it would actually show apps without you having it installed. You clicked on it, it will launch the Google Play app and stream it or something like that.
The streaming, I think, is just a very, very limited test run at the moment. So that wouldn't be happening.
Good news is the fetch worked now without the colon. So thank you.
Okay.
And a quick question on somebody said that the author article markup in the rich snippets option specifically now requires author name, but I think has it always required author name, or you're not sure?
I don't think so.
You think that's new?
I believe that's something new that was added, but I saw the tweet as well, and I asked the team, but I haven't got an answer on that yet.
Okay. Authorship's back.
No. Let's not open those wounds, man.
Okay, thank you.
John, can I jump in with it? And well, it was specifically an indexing and no indexing question, if that's okay. So we spoke last week about why we would use a robots.txt file, and it would generally be to block search and paginated pages. Now imagine the situation where Google's crawled the pages, so search pages, already indexed. Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll block it via robots.txt, but they are still there. We can't put a no index on the page because if you crawl the site, you'll hit robots.txt, and then you can't crawl the no index. So what would be in that situation where we want to pull them out, those pages out of the search? How would we go about that? Because again, we've blocked them through robots.txt. How would we then go about kind of pulling those pages out and really as quickly as possible?
I'd use the URL removal tools for something like that. So if this is like a specific folder or subdomain or something like that, where you can say everything maybe that starts with search.php or whatever pattern you have should be removed, then I'd use the removal tools for that. Those removals are for a limited time, I think 90 days. So I'd set a calendar reminder, double check after 90 days to see what's still left, because probably a lot of the content that was blocked by robots.txt ends up dropping out of the index anyway if we can't crawl it anymore. But after maybe 90 days, look at it and say, well, this is fine, this isn't that bad after all now. I'll just leave it like this, or maybe you'll say, well, I'll do another 90 days and hope that it gets better after those 90 days.
Are you referring to expired or where it says expired? Because it says expired, and I have like over 3,000 things there that I did from.
Yeah, that's when those kind of 90 days expire.
Okay.
So there's a difference there between removing content and saying that you want the cache refreshed. If you use the cache refresh, then that'll expire faster if we recognize that we've recrawled and reindexed those pages in the meantime. But if you use the removal tools, then I think we'll just remove it for 90 days. You have a choice between, so if you have the site verified, you have the choice between a per URL removal or a per folder removal, essentially. And for the folder removals, you can also specify a script name, and essentially every URL that just starts with that will be removed. So if it's search PHP, question mark, whatever, if you submit search PHP, then we'll remove everything that starts with that URL.
Will it work on anything dynamically driven? Because this is a question that was put to me, and that anything before the folder, anything dynamically driven before the actual folder won't actually work. It won't accept it. So kind of regular expression, it won't accept.
No, it has to be exact. So it has to be exact match of that folder. So if, for example, you have a category and then search, and then you want everything that's removed, everything removed under search, but the categories can be like hundreds of different categories, and that's not something you'd be able to easily do there. I mean, you can submit them manually like that if you have the time, if it's really important for you, but it's not something where you can just say anything that starts with any random characters and then goes to search, that's what I want removed.
Is there any alternative to that, or is that generally the default? If we're not going to take the no index route, is that generally, is there any other alternative to that at all to get those pages out, or?
Not really. Okay. So, I mean, depending on what kind of content it is, what probably will happen if you just block it by robots.txt is that we'll lose track of the content because we can't crawl it, and it generally won't rank that well. So if you search for normal content-y type queries, you won't find it. But if you explicitly do a site query or an in-URL query, then you'll still find that. So depending on what you're looking at, if you're saying, well, I just don't want normal users to find it, then probably it'll be fine to just block it by robots.txt. If you say, this is confidential information, maybe in the query string there's like an email address or something like that, then you might want to take the step and say, well, I don't want people to even be able to run across that at all in search.
If you were to put no index as a directive in robots.txt, I'd heard somewhere that Google will honor it, but I'm not sure, so I'm just seeking clarification. So if you had a directive of no index, would you honor that, or is that wouldn't be accepted because that has to be in the page code?
Maybe. So, yeah. So
like that.
I mean the tricky part here is I believe we honor it partially or to some extent at the moment, but it's not an official directive from our point of view, and it's something that could theoretically change because it's not something that we officially launched. So you could put that in there and we might do the right thing, or it might happen that next week the team says, oh, we've been meaning to remove this code for so long, we'll just delete that and it won't work anymore. So it's something you could do if you wanted to kind of see what happens, but if it's really a critical issue for you and something that you want to make sure is handled properly, then I wouldn't rely on that.
That would be a good solution if you could do that. So then it stops that problem of putting things in the robots.txt where you can't crawl, therefore you won't really no index it. So it kind of overrides that, and I think it'd be a good solution as a way forward if you were to do that.
It's a regular point of discussion, yeah.
Okay.
Because there are definitely some good points for using a no-index directive in robots.txt, but there's also the problem of a lot of people don't know what the robots.txt does, and they just copy and paste it from somewhere else. And if they disallow all crawling of their site accidentally, which happens fairly frequently when people do like relaunches, they accidentally keep the relaunched robots.txt, those kind of things. If it's just a disallow, then we can still show the site in search, and users can still get there somehow. It probably won't be optimal, but we'll still kind of be able to do something with it. Whereas if they copy and paste a no index in the robots.txt and they remove their whole site, then that's something we can't really help the users to kind of find that site anymore.
And just a quick index question. I'm aware of multiple solutions really to get Google to index our content. In your opinion, what would be the best and quickest way to get our content indexed? What would be the best way?
If you have a handful of pages,
Sorry,
there's a bit of echo. So if you have a handful of pages, I'd use fetch as Google, submit to index. If you have a lot of pages, if it's dynamic, I definitely use sitemaps.
Okay, cool.
I feel really lost now without the search tools location. It's not me, probably another million SEOs feel the same. It just, there's an option there where it says, like myself being from Canada, there's only one option to either choose Canada or any country. Any country kind of is confusing. You know, now I'm always thinking towards the geo tool in Search Console. Should I remove it? Should I not? Because it's very confusing.
So the setting in Search Console is confusing?
No, in search, like on top in search tools, there's no more location. You can't set it to specifically in Canada, Toronto, where like I said, I mentioned that in another hangout, but it's really it's hard to work with. Well, I don't know where my different areas. It's jumping like 1 spot, 3 spots. It's weird.
I mean, a lot of the search features are focused on user queries, those kind of things. So that's probably not something where we'd say this is critical for webmasters, therefore we should add that functionality back. Because in general, what happens with a lot of these things where you have special like links and fields and all of that is that users get confused because they don't really know what they're supposed to do. So one thing you could try is just use your URL parameters. I've heard that still works. So I don't know which parameter name that was, but that might be something to try out. Yeah, that's.
This is like on my phone. Like if I'm located wherever, the company I use, I don't want to mention their name, but they're just giving me an IP located in Mississauga, which is about 45 minutes away from me. So I'm not going to get a precise, company. So if I'm looking for flowers, I'm not going to get the flower shop, 15 minutes away from me. I'm going to get it about 45 minutes away from me. So how it was.
That's something, especially on a phone, we should be able to pick up more than just based on the IP address. But I'll take that feedback back to the team and see what they say.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let me run through some of the submitted questions, and then we can get back to more discussions. Can you tell me if title and meta tags are ranking factors? Is it generally okay to generate them automatically, or is that bad? As far as I know, from memory at the moment, title is something we do use partially for ranking. Description we don't use at all. Description is something we show in the search results as a part of the snippet. For both of them, I'd personally try to create something that's kind of useful for your users. If you're generating them automatically, that might make sense as well, as long as you're sure that your system generates something that's kind of useful for users and isn't just a copy one-to-one of your whole content. So from my point of view, if you have a smart setup to generate title and description tags, go for it. Do you have any new SEO tips for 2016? Oh man, I don't have any like magical SEO tips for next year, so I can't tell you about that high-ranking meta tag that we're currently working on because it probably won't work yet. But let's see. In general, I think next year you'll probably hear a lot from us about AMP, about mobile continued kind of as we've been doing over the years, because that's still a very big topic, and we still see a lot of sites not doing that properly. Those are probably the bigger changes. Some of the other things that will definitely happen as well is more information about JavaScript-based sites, so that we can really figure out how to handle these a little bit better in search and to probably make some better recommendations on what you could or should be doing there. But past that, of course, high-quality content is something I'd focus on. I've seen lots and lots of SEO blogs post about user experience, which I think is a great thing to focus on as well, because that essentially kind of focuses on what we're trying to look at as well. That we want to bring people to content that's really useful for them. And if your content is really useful for users, then we want to bring that to people. So if we can recognize that your site is doing everything right, then that's something we'll try to reflect.
Just like Gary said, don't remove the content, make it better.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one way to look at it, especially when you're looking at like quality algorithms. If you know that your content is low quality, then why not take the time to actually improve that instead of just deleting everything. All right, does Google treat every industry the same, or does it have some advantages or disadvantages? In general, we try to treat everything the same. We try to make our algorithms so that they apply to the web overall, because on the one hand, the web is constantly changing. On the other hand, we don't have time to make specific algorithms for specific parts of the web. And that could be like for individual languages, we try to keep everything general. For countries, for industries as well, where we say, well, this algorithm generally works across all of the billions of sites that we've run across so far, so it doesn't make sense to kind of split it up into individual industry or even have settings per industry or settings per language, settings per country. Sometimes with search features, we do have limitations per country based on maybe policy or legal issues in individual countries. With regards to some of the, I guess, more advanced features, we also have per language sometimes like edge cases, or works better or doesn't work that well, specifically around voice search, for example. If you're searching in Swiss German as some obscure language, for example, then probably won't be that good or that useful in voice search. But if you use something that's more commonly used, then maybe we can pick that up a little bit better. So these are sometimes the differences between what some people see and what you would see. So usually that's more based on language and country rather than industries. Does a two-way internal link carry more weight and reinforce the relationship between two pages more than a link just going one way? Could this help with rankings if the relationship was reinforced better? I think in general this usually helps us to better crawl the website and to understand the context a little bit better, but I doubt you would ever see any visible change in rankings from changing a website to using like two-way links or one-way links, because for the most part we can crawl these sites normally just fine. There's no need to kind of artificially create reciprocal linking within your website. If we can go through your menus, through your normal structure on your site, then usually we can pick that up fairly well. So I definitely wouldn't play around with artificial internal links like one-way, two-way within a site, because I think you're probably just wasting your time by focusing on that.
What if you do it, say, incidentally? So, for example, I've got The Sun, BBC, all these great websites linking to me, and I want to share that with my customers, so therefore I'll have a page saying,
sure,
your coverage around the web, and I will link to that. But then, am I in danger there? Because, you know, unsuspectingly, I'm doing this to share the media coverage, I suppose. So.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's not something I'd say would ever be a problem. I think this question goes more into internal linking, and in a case like that, I think it's even more kind of artificial if you're trying to avoid like a two-way link, because if you have your internal pages set up and you say, well, these pages are related, so of course they're going to link to each other. It makes sense for the user. It makes sense for us to understand the content better. It's not something you need to avoid, or where you'd ever see any kind of a ranking change just by saying, well, this page links to that one, but it doesn't link back, so it can't be that strong of a relationship. I definitely wouldn't focus on that. We added some service pages to our branch pages showing different services we offer in a certain city. This has useful and unique content, and our rankings went up a lot. Does this positive effect mean you don't class this as doorway pages? Not necessarily. So it's kind of, I mean, it's really hard to tell based on just its description. If these are a handful of pages that are focusing on specific aspects of your service that are essentially different product pages that maybe you're offering to your clients, then that's something that sounds very useful, and not something we necessarily kind of react negatively to. On the other hand, if you're creating thousands of pages with hundreds of variants each, then that's probably something we pick up as lower quality content on the one hand, maybe doorway pages, maybe even if someone from the website team were to manually look at it, they'd say, well, this is way too far, way past the line. We have to take action here to make sure that the quality of our search results remains high. So just because you're seeing a certain behavior now doesn't necessarily mean that what you're doing is the right thing. I kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, maybe get some input from other webmasters who are in a similar situation to kind of figure out, are you getting close to the line, are you way past the line, or are you doing something that essentially just makes sense for your users and is perfectly fine. If you recovered from a penalty, does Google still discount the keyword phrases it was penalizing you for to being with once the penalty has been removed? Or is there nothing holding you back? It's hard to say. So in general, a manual action, if it's resolved with a reconsideration request, it's out of our system. It's not that our algorithms will hold a grudge against your website and say, well, there was a manual action here, therefore we can't trust this site as well. With regards to some kind of manual actions, our algorithms might pick up on these issues as well, and it might take some time to kind of reflect the new state. So, for example, if you have a lot of unnatural backlinks, then that's something where the manual action might happen and be resolved by cleaning up some of that. But the algorithms might say, well, we've recently recrawled these and still have seen the bad links, so it might take a certain longer time for that to kind of settle back down again. But especially if you're talking about content on your pages, it's not that our algorithms would hold any grudge against your site from a manual action. If I have page content under an H2 heading, and this content also has subheadings within it, should I use H3s with this content or just leave it all under H2? What's better? So these headings help us to understand the context of your content a little bit better, but it's not a magic bullet. So if you use these headings incorrectly, then it's not something where we'll say, well, this will be a problem, and our algorithms will rank your site worse. These headings help us to better kind of understand the structure, but it's not something that I'd say would be absolutely critical. So from that point of view, if you think it makes sense from a semantic point of view to use H3s below the H2s, and you can structure your content like that, sure, go for it. If this is something that would result in you having to redesign your whole website, then probably there are more important things to focus on.
What about multiple H1s? Will that have any impact at all if it's relevant to the page?
Really, not really. I mean, what generally happens there is we recognize there are multiple headings, so we don't know which one of these is really the main heading. So there's some kind of dilution, I guess you would say, happening there, but it's not the case that we would say you're doing something wrong and we're going to ignore this completely. It's kind of like taking a heading that's, I don't know, 4 or 5 words and you expand it to a heading that's like 2 paragraphs long, then of course we can't treat all of the content within that heading the same as a short one would. Regarding rich snippets, would it be okay to have the same reviews on many similar category pages, or is there a risk to lose ranking stars completely if one does so and therefore doesn't provide unique ratings on every page? In general, the reviews should be focusing on the product that you're offering on those pages. So if this is a review about one specific product and you have that same product on different parts of your site, maybe in different categories, for example, then using the same reviews there definitely makes sense. On the other hand, if you have the same reviews across your whole website for all of the products that you offer, then that starts looking a little bit strange in that we don't really know what we should be doing with these reviews because they're clearly not specific to the main product that you have on the page anymore. Is there any way to find out what pages have not been indexed apart from using small sitemaps in Search Console to help work it out? Also, any tips as to why pages may not get indexed? That's a hard one. I don't know. So sitemaps is definitely one way to do it. Another thing that you could do if you have the server logs is to see which pages get traffic from search. That kind of indirectly tells you these pages are actually indexed because they get traffic from search and maybe the other ones aren't indexed. That's probably what I'd focus on more rather than kind of focusing on the technical part of this page is indexed or this page is not indexed. As to why pages may not get indexed, there are a bunch of reasons. Let's see. We have spam. Sometimes we recognize that there's spam, so we drop those from the index. Sometimes we recognize that a page is duplicate before even crawling it, so we might not pick that up. Sometimes we'll recognize it's duplicate after crawling it. So if the content is essentially the same or the primary content is the same, then maybe we'll drop that after indexing. Sometimes what happens is we just don't have enough signals for a page to actually go and figure out, well, this is something we really need to crawl and index. So that might be happening, that we don't even go out and crawl it because we don't know that much about it. What you can do there is help us with a sitemap file, help us with clear internal navigation. The easier we can recognize that these pages are really relevant to your site, the more we can actually focus on them. But otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily focus on having all pages indexed all the time. That's, from my point of view, something that's almost a rare situation, that we'd actually index 100% of a site all the time. Even for really big and popular websites, we don't index all of the pages that we find there all of the time. So that's not something that I would say is necessarily a goal. But rather, I'd focus on the pages that you think are important for your site and really make sure that they're visibly important when we do go off and crawl and index your site. We've changed our structured data markups, yet the old schemas we use to have are still shown in Search Console with a last detection date of nearly 3 months ago. I'm sure our pages have been crawled more often, so what's up with that? I'd love to have an example of this. I've heard this from, I think, 2 or 3 people so far, and it might be that we're just showing the old data there because we don't have a new variation of that data yet for those pages. So for example, if you remove a specific type of markup from your page, then we might know, well, the old markup was last found on these pages back then, but it doesn't mean that the new markup that we find there, which is different from the old markup, hasn't been picked up. But if we're providing something that's kind of confusing in Search Console around structured data there, then I'd love to have some examples so that I can talk to the team about that and see what we can do to make that either clear to understand what's actually happening there, or filter all of that out so that we can really say, well, this is what you need to focus on, and we'll keep all of this kind of cruft old data away from you so you don't have to worry about it. But if you can send me some examples, I'd love to see them. Is there any connection between crawling and ranking? We talk about index pages. Of course, I think the general question here is, given that a page is already indexed, what's the difference between a page that's crawled more frequently and one that's crawled less frequently? And in general, we do try to pick up pages that are more important and crawl them more frequently, but it's more of a symptom, essentially, that we think, well, this is a more important page, therefore we'll crawl it more frequently. It's not that we'd say, well, we crawl this page more frequently for other reasons, maybe because we keep seeing a timestamp being changed on this page, therefore it'll become more important. But rather, it's kind of the other way around, that we think this is a critical page for us, therefore we'll crawl it more frequently.
Are you guys ever changed the crawl stat graph? Because it's been the same graph for so many years. Are you planning to maybe give it a makeover?
I don't know. I find the data there kind of useful.
Okay.
So at least I think it's kind of live, and it kind of reflects what's actually happening there. But if you have specific ideas where you say this is totally confusing, or I can't work with this at all, the way that it is, you guys should, I don't know, delete this graph and start over again, then that kind of feedback would be useful. But I think if it's working for people, if it's useful information for people, then I'd be up for just keeping it the way it is. I wouldn't focus on modernizing something just for the sake of having modernized it. Because that's always time that's lost, which could be spent focusing on other things.
Okay.
Is it possible that product pages with images do benefit or suffer from their own ranking because of the ranking of the image and image search? So a good image ranking might result in a good ranking for the hosting product page. Not necessarily. We try to separate those essentially as much as possible, in the sense that some things make sense in image search, some things are really important in web search, and it's not that we'd say this is really popular in image search or really useful for image search, therefore we'll boost it in web ranking as well. We try to kind of keep those separate. And what might happen is, of course, for some topics we'll show the image universal block on top, and that could include an image from a page that's actually ranked fairly low or somewhere below it in the main search results as well. So it's not that we'd say kind of couple the two that strongly. We notice a huge increase in traffic over images, Google DE as refer. Has there been any major changes Google with impact in image search? I don't know. I don't think there have been big changes there. One thing that is kind of special with the German and the French image search is that they use the old style UI with the iframed landing page behind. So that's something where you might see some effects from experiments there with regards to maybe moving to HTTPS, those kind of things. With regards to impressions and clicks in Search Console, you might also see some changes there as we try to kind of unify the way that we track clicks and impressions across the older style UI that we have in Germany and France and the more modern UI that we have everywhere else. So those are, I think, the two main sources where you might see some mismatches there. I think, especially in Germany and in France, with regards to image search, that's something where you'll probably expect some changes because the old UI is, in the meantime, getting kind of rusty almost, where, I don't know, maybe it makes sense to find a way to modernize that a little bit in the future. If a site has given us organic and affiliate links, can that be detrimental to our website? Imagine where a person placed an order on a site, blogged about the products, and later became an affiliate. Can this look dodgy to Google? From my point of view, that's perfectly fine. That's not something I'd really worry about. If you do have a lot of affiliate links, if you provide a snippet for your affiliates to link to your site, I just make sure that it has a nofollow there to kind of clearly say this is essentially a link that's placed with regards to kind of monetary connection to the site. But otherwise, if there are natural links and affiliate links on the same site pointing to your site, that can happen. That's not something I'd say our algorithms would pick up and say this is problematic. Do blogs hosted on platforms such as WordPress or Blogspot have the same value as blogs on their own top-level domain? Yes, in general, they do. And sometimes you can host your blog on WordPress or Blogspot and have a custom domain. So it's not something that we try to separate. What's the status of HTTP 2? I don't know. Someone asked about this in one of the last Hangouts, and I haven't heard back from the team on that, so I'll assume we're not doing that just yet. If your site supports HTTP 2, then that's something you can probably check your server logs and see what's happening there before we actually tell you. So enterprising SEO bloggers out there, if you find Google crawling with HTTP on your site, then that might be something to write up about, and I'm sure Barry will pick that up quickly as well.
So you recommend we switch to HTTP 2 just to test to see if you guys index it?
Well, you're not switching to HTTP 2. It's something that's automatically upgraded in the sense that when a browser that supports HTTP 2 goes to your site, it'll send, I believe, a special header that says, I'm ready for HTTP 2, and if the server supports that, it'll switch to that transparently.
So you can support both, you're saying?
Yeah. It's not that you're like going from one to the other and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Essentially, it's backwards compatible and it kind of transparently upgrades.
We'll give it a try. Thanks.
Are you going to do a separate hangout on AMP?
Probably a bunch next year. So I think the next one is about mobile, which includes AMP as well. So that'll be kind of like an intro, I guess. But we'll probably do more on AMP as we get closer to actually showing it in search, or as we do start showing it in search.
By the way, I love that video you shared on Google+. It's probably the best video I've seen in the year. The one that you shared about the AMP.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it was 10 out of 10, John.
Yeah, it wasn't mine, so I'll have to pass it on. Why so much not provided in Google Analytics? Difficult to analyze the traffic. This is essentially based on the referrer information that's passed to the websites, which is something by policy we've decided to do, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago in the meantime. So that's something where you kind of have to be creative, use the data from Search Console as well, mix that together with the analytics data and find a way that you can connect those two. I'm looking for SEO and PPC for a company. Our ranking for some of the main search terms, self-guided walking holidays, has dropped significantly in the last 7 days. And this probably goes on. Ooh, lots of questions suddenly. What I recommend doing there is maybe posting in the help forum and getting help from other peers who have similar websites who might have some tips for you about this kind of thing. And in the help form, make sure that you have your URL in there somewhere. You can use a URL shortener if you like, but just so that people can actually look at your specific content rather than try to discuss a theoretical situation of this site ranking for this term. So that's probably what I'd recommend doing there. All right. Let me just run through some of the remaining questions and see if there's something specific we need to focus on. Otherwise, yeah, maybe I'll just open up for questions from you all in the meantime.
Just the HTTPS move. I wanted to know, is it really necessary to add the disavow file from the old one? So from shoes.com to https.shoes.com. Should I add the disavow?
You should put the disavow on your canonical version of your site. So if you move your site from HTTP to HTTPS, then that's where I'd submit the disavow file. If you move from one domain to another, of course, then I'd put that there too.
Yeah, because so you're saying it's necessary to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly easy to do. You can download the file in Search Console and just upload the same file again with the other setup, and then you kind of have it solved.
Okay. 2048 is the best certificate you suggest, yeah?
I think that's like the common one at the moment.
Okay. Thanks.
Hi, John. Is there any difference between a link with a text anchor and a link from a picture in case that picture has alt and title in terms of PR transfer?
PageRank should be the same regardless of what you have there. With regards to kind of associating the anchor with the URL, I believe both of those would be essentially equivalent. You don't need both the title and the alt tag. I think the alt tag is enough there because it's essentially duplicated again.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, John. Sorry. Okay. Hi. John, I'm just really curious to hear if we are doing anything wrong regarding using the Search Console API, because we, even though the quota says something around, I think, 2,000 requests per second, we can only manage around 3 per second. Is there anything, I mean, who can we get in touch with to solve these kinds of issues? Because
I think, though, that's the normal quota. So we have, for the API, we have a general quota. I think it's like 10 QPS. But that's kind of across all the features. If you're only focusing on search analytics data, then I think the limit there is 2 QPS.
Okay, so we would have to request an increase.
Yeah, I believe at the moment we're discussing how we should set up the quota in the future so that people don't need to have special exceptions. So you probably won't hear from us that quickly, but we're looking at what we can do there to make that a little bit easier so that it just works for people who need this kind of data. So in practice, what I do there is just make sure that you're throttling and kind of spreading your traffic out so that you don't hit those quota limits. I think another difficulty there is that the error that's returned if you go above the quota is, I think, I don't know, some generic error instead of a clear, like, you're doing too much, you should slow down.
Yeah, yeah. But
So,
would it help to do requests from, let's say, more than one IP address, or is that irrelevant?
that's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, because we're hitting the same endpoint.
Yeah.
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 But is there any way? I mean, we would need to increase. Maybe we could manage with the quota right now, but if we want to tightly integrate with Search Console, and I should give the background that we are Site Improve, which we've created as a site governance tool, website governance tool, wherein we want to integrate keywords on a per page, so they can see what the pages are ranking for. And down the line, the quota is maybe it just may be insufficient.
Yeah. I don't have a great answer for you at the moment. I suspect it'll look different in a couple of months.
Okay.
And we can kind of figure out what we can do with the quota, what kind of limits we can provide. Also with regards to better documenting how we're actually doing the quota, specifically around search analytics, because that's where a lot of people are hitting the limits with the other functionality in the API.
Yeah.
People are not reaching those limits that much. So that's something where maybe we can clarify like how many requests per site or per account you can do, so that you can better work out, well, if I grow to double my user base, I need to maybe do more caching on my side, or maybe kind of bundle requests a little bit differently, so that I can like remain below the quota for the long run.
Yeah. Right.
John, can I go back to the app stuff quickly? So it seems like if the fetch as Google does work, then there wouldn't be any crawl errors, so everything seems to be working properly in terms of deep linking and stuff like that. When I first launched, I had on average maybe like 600 impressions to 1,000 impressions. Then that Search Console bug happened, and now literally at like 0 impressions to like 2 impressions per day. Do I have like a Penguin app penalty?
No. I'm not aware of any like app-specific penalties around that, so I wouldn't say that it's anything like that. I think what probably happened is that the timing was kind of awkward, especially with regards to that Search Console bug that we had there, where maybe we were running an experiment before, we were running that until about then, and we stopped that experiment, and we had that bug in Search Console, and now it looks like, well, because of that bug, the numbers went down, but actually it's just because we kind of stopped that experiment. But I really passed your site on to the team to kind of look at, to see what specifically is happening there, because I also thought, well, this isn't really motivating for people to actually do app indexing. If you get like 2 impressions a day, that's not really that exciting. So I don't know what else I can really recommend there, other than that you encourage maybe your readers to kind of use the app as well. What might make sense is to use the smart app banner that you can use now for Chrome, that has like the banner that goes to the Play Store link, so that when people are using a phone to access your site, they can kind of point them there.
Okay, I think I have that, but I'll double check. And yeah, people are asking me, show me the stats, show me is it worth doing, and I'm like, I really see nothing now, so I can't really tell people anything. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a break here. I think we have the next couple of Hangouts set up. The one, I believe, in the week between Christmas and New Year is a little bit longer, so we have some more time to chat, and maybe we won't go through any submitted questions or something like that. Maybe we'll do it a little bit more chatty. If people are around, then feel free to jump on in. Maybe we'll also have time to look at specific sites, depending on how many people actually find the time to make it.
Can you reveal secrets on that one?
I don't know. Maybe
one small secret, not.
Yeah, I don't think that's specific one. But maybe that secret meta tag that I was mentioning before.
You can say all those things.
All right. Yeah.
That's worth asking.
But you're working on the holidays like always, right? Because you're on the forums every single holiday. You and Matt Cutts last year.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what Matt's plans are for this year. That might be fun. I mean, it's always nice to hang out on the forums and do some stuff there, and especially over the holidays when you see people having problems with their websites, they usually appreciate that kind of help.
Right.
So that's something you guys can jump in as well, and maybe you'll find the question here or there. I know Mihai has been doing a bunch of answers in the forums, which is really appreciated. So I don't know, you're welcome to jump in as well, and maybe see some of us there over the holidays. All right, with that, let's take a break here. Thank you for joining. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the discussions on the various topics that we've been looking at. And I hope to see some of you again in some of the future Hangouts. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, John. Thanks, guys.
Bye, John.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, Rob.